Hello, how's everybody doing?
So far, so good. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
I appreciate it, thank you. There we go, look at that. Hopefully I hit the right button. Am I gonna hit the right button? I don't know. Maybe, let's see.
I'm not seeing a screen yet.
Yeah, you should be
There we
seeing
go.
one now. There we go, okay. All right,
The bees are
so
out.
go ahead, sorry.
Yep. Jose is doing the 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock presentation, customizations, tips, and tricks. I think everybody on the online community might know you, Jose.
Maybe.
Go ahead, take it away, impress us.
Yeah, well, all right. So hopefully some of these are short and sweet, but I just wanted to cover some things that are not necessarily well documented that could make your life a little easier when you're doing Epicor custom development and customizations. So quick slide about me. I work for Stephen Gould Corporation. We make packages and walk your dog and anything you need us to, but mostly packages. I'm a software engineer for them, mostly focused on Epicor implementation. We are implementing 41 plants and 7 companies as we speak. So our plate's a little full. But that's pretty much it from my standpoint. If you guys need some packages designed for your many manufacturing stuff, reach out to someone at my company because I don't know how to do that. All right. So I'm just gonna jump right in and say, for the most part, these are going to be short snippets of things that I kind of have ran across. They're usually classes or libraries that Epicor has made available that are not really documented anywhere, but can make something that seems complex fairly easy. So I'm going to start here with simple attachments. So this is a little class that Epicor has made available that, again, is not really documented anywhere that I can find, that allows you to add attachments to a customization or to a record within a customization with a single line of code. Now, I know in my career at Epicor, I've had to do attachments a whole bunch of times, and it's usually a huge nightmare. You have to upload the file, you have to figure out what the X file references are, and create the attachment records. So when I discovered this little library here, I was quite happy with it, and I thought that it might be something that people might find useful. So it is simply that one line of code right there, and I will demonstrate it in a second. But basically, from any customization, you can put that line of code into, say, a button click event or just a specific event on your form, and have a file of your choosing be automatically attached to the given record in Epicor. And again, that basically removes all the complexity of file attaching and handling. And it supports all the attachment options that Epicor supports natively, including the document, whatever, the DocStar, and SharePoint and anything like that. So as long as your setup is correct, this one line of code can do that for you. So I'm gonna be jumping in and out of the slides and into demo land because I hate slides. I think they're mostly pretty boring. So I'm just gonna go jump in here and kind of demonstrate how this works. I mean, it's a one line of code, so most of you can probably figure out how it works, but nevertheless. So I have this simple form. It's a simple UDO5 maintenance form. And I have put up a button here called attach file. And again, it's just a one line of code. In this case, I made it a little bit fancier. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can zoom in. Can you guys see that okay? Somebody yell, maybe.
Yep, this is totally fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I
Chris
made it.
can't see it, but I can.
I made it a little bit nicer here by prompting you to select a file that you'd like to attach. And again, this is not an Epicor thing. This is just a simple .NET file selection dialog. So all I'm doing here is instantiating a file selector and saying if the user clicks OK in that file selector, then attach whatever file they chose to the UDO5 record that is loaded on the screen. And again, it's just this one line of code. And so just to kind of show it in action here.
Jose, there's a question from Dave.
Does that attachment code work for DocStar as well?
It does. It does. As a matter of fact, I'm about what the attachment that I'm about to do goes to DocStar. So I'm just gonna pick this guy here and say that. So I just click the button, and you see at the bottom here it says uploading attachment to DocStar system, and there you go. My file is now attached to DocStar. So it's quite nice, and it's a simple one-liner that takes care of all the rigmarole for you. So basically you can have, like, if you have a list of files that you want to attach, or you want to attach all the files in a given folder, you can just loop through those files really quickly and boom, 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 attach them all in at once. So again, that's just a simple one-liner that I thought was quite helpful. And again, it's not really documented anywhere. There's an optional parameter at the end here where it says, where I said PG order D. And that's the document type. So in this case, I use PG order D, which is a document type that I set up as a DocStar attachment. That's why it went straight to DocStar. But if I had set this up as a different document type, obviously it would have gone to either SharePoint or the network drive or anywhere else.
I assume you have to have that document type created already?
Correct. Yeah, the document type has to exist. If it doesn't exist, it will actually prompt you via the regular system of attachments. So if you attach, if you were to either leave this out or put something in there that doesn't exist, the attachment handler will prompt you and say, select the document type that it goes with. So it handles that too. So again, simple little trick that hopefully will make your life a little easier. Any questions? It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, but and I will make all this code available online, and then I'm gonna send it to Fred to post on the UG or wherever else. So you guys should all be copy paste this code.
Jose, you could also turn around and put that on a drag and drop event of a screen object, and people could just drag files onto it and attach them that way.
Absolutely, and that's actually the implementation that we did in our system. So I wasn't going to go into it, but just to kind of demonstrate that point, we have this custom processing that we had to create because of #Corona, where we had to go completely paperless rather. And so one of the things that we did is, because we're still implementing, is that we have all these physical documents that we rely upon to process our orders. And so basically this thing in the middle here is a drag and drop canvas that I just put in place, and I use that auto attachment little piece of code to do it. So I can come in here and enter some information, and basically I can go to a PDF, which I think I have one over here, and just drag it in there. And as soon as I drag it in there, I get this pop-up that says, do you want to attach this document? And I say yes. And using that one line of code, if I have set up my record correctly, it would automatically attach it. So yeah, exactly. Drag and drop it's a favorite use of that one line of code for that to work. So yeah, you want to attach this document, yes, and now it automatically attaches it, uploads it to DocStar. And then I have a BPM processing form that pops up here and actually asks the user for a little bit of additional information. So I'm actually allowing them to select the doc type ID via a BPM data form. And so I hit OK, and that gets loaded to DocStar and immediately loaded into the screen. And so the attachment was now put into the Epicor attachment and into DocStar, but then it was also presented to the user. And the reason for that is because our users are used to driving all their order processing from a physical document that looks something like that, right? So they wanted to be able to see the document so that they could do some processing on it. And again, this is all because of Corona, but regardless, it does do exactly what Calvin mentioned. Any other questions? Okay.
So the Corona was a blessing in disguise, finally. Paperless.
Yes, the Corona moved us about 30 years into the future in a week. So we were still doing everything paper-based because we were slowly implementing 41 plants, and we had no choice but to jump forward 30 years and go completely paperless in less than a week. And that was fun. All right, so the next one here I'm calling growing your tree, because it's a couple of different hacks that you can do around your Epicor tree view on the left side of your screen. And the first one is showing the custom child on a tree. So if you are familiar with how Epicor works, you know that you can bring in a user-defined table as a child to an existing record. So for example, this is UDO5, right? And I can easily bring in a child table to be a detail for UDO5. So for example, if I pull in this UDO5 record, right? My UDO5 record is up here, but I also added UD101 as a child to UDO5. And furthermore, I brought in the children of UD101 as a child to UD101. But the only problem I have with it is that it doesn't show me those children in the tree here, right? So I can't really use my tree for navigational purposes. I can't use my tree to see what record I'm selected on, because even though Epicor automatically generates all the code for me for auto attaching the child, it doesn't automatically update my tree to include the children. And so that's what that little snippet of code here is about. And so I'm going to kind of walk through it quickly and show you what it does. But basically, we execute this after we have added the custom view, right? And so if you look here, the first thing we do is we get a hold of that tree view, right, that Epicor provides. And then if we look at it under reflection, we can see that it has a tree binding. And that's what tells the tree what to display. Now, by default, the tree binding that comes with any screen is whatever Epicor put in there. So by default in UDO5, the tree binding only has one table, and that is the UDO5 table. So if we want to expand what the tree shows, we simply have to expand the tree binding to include the additional views that we are creating. Okay, so if you look at the code here, I'm making a new tree binding that is going to be the length of the original plus 1. So I'm adding one more item to my tree binding. Then I'm copying that binding array to make sure that I keep my original one. But now I have an extra space in it. And so in that last spot, I'm going to add now a binding to UDO2 in this case, which would allow it to show up on the grid. So again, jumping back into the code here. Whoops, how do I get out of the drawing? There we go. Jumping back into the code, let's take a look at it real quick. There's a lot of code here, but most of the code in this page was all created automatically by Epicor when I said add the child attachment. So I'm not going to cover that, but you guys know that if you go to Tools, Wizards, Customization Wizards, there is this add user defined table as a child. That's all I did. I added UD101 as a child to UDO5. That's all I did, and it generated all this code for me automatically. I didn't really touch anything else here. The only thing that I did touch was the tree view, right? So if I remove the commented out code here that says set up child tree view, that's the function that I created. And I just went over the code. Again, I am getting a hold of the epi tree view. I am getting a hold of that tree view's bindings. And in this case, I am adding two items to it. I am adding UD101A and UD101 because I brought both of those tables as children into this table. And then all I do is I set it back. I set the binding back on the tree view, okay? So if I do that, and I save, and I go back into that same record that I was in, sorry, it opened up in a different screen. I can now bring up that record, and it still loads my records down here, but now if I expand the left side, you can see that now I have my parent, my child, and then that child's children's. And you can see the navigation taking hold. So when I click on 5827401, it automatically knows that that's the record that I'm selected for in the grid. So the navigation is preserved as it would be with any regular tree item. So again, that's a benefit of doing that, is that if you're somewhere deep into here and you want to navigate to a specific node, you can do that by using the tree instead of having to rely on being on the correct tab. And again, it's very simple code. All you're doing is saying, hey, make some room on that tree binding for me, and I want you to monitor these extra data views. Okay.
So was there
Any
nothing
questions?
special for the hierarchy then? Or it was just aware?
No, the hierarchy is established by the parent-child relationship. So that's the beauty of it. You don't have to figure any of that out, right? When I added the user-defined table as a child, Epicor, I told Epicor who the parent was and who the child was. So if I go into my wizard here, and I'm not going to do it all the way through, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you go to add user-defined table as child and you hit launch wizard, it asks you who the parent is. So I said the parent was UD05. And then it asks you, okay, who do you want the child to be? And I told it was UD101, but let's just pick a random one, UD06. So here you establish the relationship between the parent and the child. So you say key1 equals to key1 on the child, and key2 equals to key2 on the child, and so on and so forth until you have established a relationship. When you hit finish on this, Epicor goes through and generates all this bunch of code. It's literally like 500 lines of code automatically for you that establishes those relationships. And if you look through the code, you can see where they do things like that. So here, set the parent view and the child view. So they said key1 is the parent of key1 and key2 is the parent of key2, and then they set the parent view. The only thing they do not do for you is this call to set up child tree view, which I did here in order for it to show on the left sidebar on the menu, right? But everything else, the parent, child, and all that stuff is taken care of it for you by Epicor, which is really cool. Any other questions about this particular piece of code? Again, not overly complicated. It's just simply adding an extra node to the tree, and then the Epimagic takes care of showing it under the right parent for you, which is really cool. Another example of growing your tree is showing attachments that may belong to that child view. And the principle is actually quite similar. So again, by default, it doesn't show the attachments underneath the child if you have attachments there. But you can, again, write a little function called setup child attachments that does that for you. So again, if we look at this code, this one's even easier. So when you use the wizard that we just used to add user defined field as a child, Epicor automatically brings in the attachments for you on that child under a table called auto attach UD101 or auto attach UD whatever it is. So if you go to any binding on the screen here, and you look at the different available bindings, you can see that we have auto attach UD05, which is the default view in this form, but we also have auto attach UD101 and auto attach UD101A. This two here, I did not add. Epicor added that for me when I brought in 101 and 101A using the wizard. So Epicor did that work for me. However, it doesn't automatically show them for you on the screen, right? And that's where you have to come in and make that happen. And the way to make that happen is very, very easy. All you have to do is get a hold of that view and simply set its parent. So when Epicor creates that auto attach view, they do not set a parent for it. So the tree doesn't know where to drop the attachment. As a matter of fact, if you look at, if we go back and rerun the code real quick, you can see that the attachments are actually there, but they're just not shown in the correct place. So if I look at that record again without making that change, or maybe I did make that change, I don't know, we'll find out. If I look at that record, you can see that the attachments are shown down here. They're shown in a separate node altogether instead of being shown directly underneath where they're supposed to be. So the attachments are already available. There's 4 attachments, and if you look at them, you can kind of tell 5823091 goes with this one, and that one goes with this one, and that one goes with this one, but there's no relationship there. So the attachments exist, but Epicor doesn't know where to put them. So when you go and you add that parent-child relationship between your auto attach and the record, then you tell Epicor who, who the parent, you're like Maury over there telling Epicor who the parent is. And when you do that, it fixes that for you. So all I did here is I told the auto attachment that its parent had a relationship to it based on these keys. So key 1 matches key 1, and key 2, key 2, and key 3, all the way through my child key 5. So all I'm doing is telling it, how to find its parent. And when you do that, if we rerun now the customization, we rerun the customization here, hopefully it should now show me the attachments in the correct location. And so now if you look, each of these has an attachment, as they should. And again, I didn't really do any logic. All I did was tell Epicor, hey, that attachment belongs to this guy. And again, the Epi magic took care of putting it in the right place in the tree.
Jose, Chris is wondering, does that also work with Dropbox attachments?
Dropbox attachments?
Dogstar attachments.
Yes. These actually are all Dogstar attachments. So yeah, this works all perfectly fine with any kind of attachment in the system. That's the beauty of it. You do not have to rely on anything custom. So if the attachment exists in Epicor, that's really all that you need to know. If the attachment exists in Epicor and it's a valid attachment, then Epicor will find it for you and attach it to the right place.
Correct. You're just displaying the Epicor attachment. You're not creating an attachment system.
Nope. Right. No. I'm just displaying the existing attachment. So this record's already had these attachments on there. All I'm doing is displaying them. And if I had navigated to the UD 101 form, the native one, then this would have worked, for free because it's just part of the regular form. But because since I hijacked UD 101 and brought it in as a child to UD 105, then I had to do a little bit of legwork to have those attachments show up correctly. But now that I did that, they're showing up as native as any other screen would. And again, the nice thing is that you get the tree navigation and you get everything else. You even get the attachment panel here like you would normally. So you can technically add new attachments straight from in here too, or view them or delete them. And again,
so this would work for repairing as well, Epicor Tree View, where it doesn't stay in sync with the screen like Job Manager or Job Entry.
Yes, it should. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what views and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you should be able to repair it as long as you get a hold of that Epi binding array and manipulate it to your advantage. All right. Any other questions about this little snippet there? And again, all these snippets are going to be available somewhere.
We'll go ahead and email the presentations and all the attachments that you send over out to the attendees. We'll also put it up on the YouTube or on the portal for people to download.
Sounds great. All right, so any other questions about the attachment views and things like that? I think it's fairly simple. Again, it's not too complicated. It's not fancy refactoring, but it allows you to give native functionality that is usually missing, and that's important for the users. Every time I make a custom screen with custom children, they always say, oh, why isn't it show up on the tree? Or why is my attachment not showing up on the tree? And so this allows you to give them some of that native look and feel that they're used to on every screen. Okay, so this one's called Simple Memos. This is another one of those classes that Epicor makes available but tells nobody about it. So as you know, memos are available in some screens, right? Your order entry has memos, your quote entry has memos, your customer entry has memos, but not every screen has a memo. And normally what I would do is if somebody wanted memos available, I would, instantiate the memo adapter and create a custom toolbar menu item and manage the click button and invoke it and manage the entire process from beginning to end. And it never quite worked right. And it really made me mad that in the native system, when you have a memo, there's a little asterisk that changes on the icon to tell you that there's a memo available. And I could never get that to work right. No matter how custom I got with it, it was always not as accurate as I wanted it. And then we ran across this abstract class a little while ago, and it kind of blew my mind. So there's this abstract class called Memo Helper that is available to anybody who wants to use it. It's a public abstract class. And if you want to add memo to any screen, all you have to do is implement this abstract class in your customization, and immediately memos start working, and they work properly. They highlight, they do the icon properly, they do everything else properly. So again, one of those like little tiny things that is not really advertised anywhere, but it's incredibly annoying when you're trying to get things to work. So let me kind of jump into this one and take a look here. Where did I put the memo at? Sorry, wrong screen. And again, this one's fairly simple. It's just a simple class that you have to implement for the memo to work. So you see, let me open UD103 native. So if I do UD103 native, you can see that there's no memo available. So I can make a new record here and do whatever I want and save, but there is no memo, right? So if I want memo available, I can implement that abstract class. So now let me open it with the simple abstract class implemented, and you can immediately see that the memo icon has been added. I didn't add that icon. All I did was implement the abstract class, and the icon was brought in automatically. All right. So now I can open it, and I can see I have a memo. I can click on that memo, and it opens the memo screen like it normally does, and I can add a memo. So I can say Larry test, and I can hit save and close it, and then the next time I come to the record, the memo icon has a asterisk on it. So now I know that there's a memo there, right? So the beauty of it is that I didn't really have to implement all the magic here. I just had to implement that specific abstract class that Epicor provides. There's somebody unmuted that's making a lot of noise. All right.
It's probably Calvin.
Okay. All right, so if you look at the code, there's like no code, right? It's a simple code. All I did was instantiate and form load. I instantiate UD103 memo helper. And that UD103 memo helper, Elaine, I think you're making a lot of noise. Do you mind muting yourself?
Yeah, I don't know why it turned on.
Thank you. Anyway, so the UD103 memo helper is all I did. So this code right here did all the magic for me because I went ahead and implemented the memo helper abstract class. And it's a very simple class to implement. It's only a handful of methods you have to implement. So there's a simple constructor here, and it's very well documented by Epicor. So all this takes is an Epicor form and a transaction, which you have available in any screen, right? The Epicor form here is UD103. Which I passed in, and the transaction is OTrans. You always have those available to you, so that's the only thing you have to really give it. Fantastic, right? Here you gotta tell it what data view you want to attach to. Well, you know that, right? You know that, right? Because it's UD103, that's the view you want to attach to. So that's all the thing you have to give it here. And then the last thing is you have to provide it a method to launch the memo editor. And again, all you have to do that is to tell it what table you're going to be attaching to and pass in the Cicero ID of the table that you're going to be attaching to. So as long as you implement this little abstract class at the bottom of your customization, then a single line of code anywhere in your customization adds the native functionality for memos. Yeah.
Did you, was there a reason, could you also use just OTrans there without form period OTrans? Could you just say OTrans?
You're talking about what line? I'm sorry.
You just had it highlighted.
Line 56.
56. I'm
Like,
just doing OTrans. It's
I'm
a
gonna
comma.
say
on the left side, you got. Okay.
No,
I'm going to say stay on the OTrans there.
This is two parameters, right? So the first one is the form name, and the second one is
I see. There's a comma. Okay.
There's a comma.
There's
there.
a comma
Yeah.
and a period. Got it.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
if you look at the constructor here, it takes the base form, which is UD103, and then it takes OTrans, which is OTrans, right? So yeah, you can just do that. That's fine. And then as long as you have it instantiated, it does it for you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, when you add a class after the code there, watch out because your wizards will get a little wonky.
Yeah, that can happen. So the wizards can go a little crazy, especially if you're not careful where you put it. You can also put your class at the top. It doesn't really matter where you put it, so you can put it at the top, and that usually tends to work a little better. I personally don't like the look of it, but yes, Chris is right. if you put classes at the bottom of your script class here, some of the wizards will go a little wonky. Now that generally shouldn't happen as long as you have kept these little comments here intact. And that's something that usually Epicor doesn't talk about, although it literally says it here, but it says do not delete. But a lot of people do not read that. So if you are in a customization and you say, I don't know what these stupid comments are doing here, and you blow them away, you will basically break all your customization's ability to automate stuff for you. The wizards will stop working correctly, things will go wonky. So the comments that Epicor adds here, even though they seem kind of superfluous, leave them there because that's the markers that they use to know where to insert the wizard code. So that's why it says begin wizard, end wizard. So every piece of code inside here is wizard code that will be automatically populated for you. So if you can stay away from modifying those comments, your life will be a lot easier. But yes, Chris is correct. If you put a class down here at the bottom, some of those wizards will go wonky on you. And you'll notice that right away if it happens. Haven't happened in quite a while. Again, it usually only happens if you made the mistake of moving some of these comments around. Then it kind of loses place. But do keep that in mind. Anything else? Okay. All right, so that basically just allows you to add memos to any screen you want with little to no code and without much setup. So that's cool. The other one that I like to use quite a bit is one that I like to call TTable Cleanup. So a lot of us use BPMs a lot, and if you know, the BPMs use the TT tables or the temporary tables to pass data back and forth between the front end of the application, the client, and the back end business logic. But what a lot of people don't know is that that TT table ends up being what the user is presented with. So if you make changes to that TT table, the user will actually see those changes, even if those changes are not permanent. And that can be quite useful if you're trying to do some on-the-fly filtering for the users without modifying data. So I'll give an example of that that I did to fix a bug. So let me go into Epicor real quick and demonstrate that real quick. So I'm gonna go to AP Invoice Tracker. Oops, come on, keyboard. You guys like my clicky keyboard? It's very loud. Everybody always complains about my keyboard. I always say that it makes me sound smarter.
And by the way, anyone who asked me earlier how I got some of the methods, you see that little red icon on the bottom of Jose's taskbar? It's called .NET Reflector. It can get you those definitions that are not documented, basically.
This little fella right here is a gold mine, so it's well worth the little bit of money you have to pay for it, but it allows you to look at all the Epicor secrets without them knowing. Don't tell them I said that. Anyway, so if I'm an AP Invoice Tracker, and I just pick a random invoice by VC99 Packaging Systems, and I want to see, I have changelog turned on to this invoice, right? So I want to see what changes were made to this invoice. So I can see that there are some changes recorded in my changelog, which I'm very happy about. And I'm going to go look at that. And so I open that up. And this is the changelog. And now I'm looking at it and I'm going, wait a minute, my invoice number is 459147. But the changelog I just clicked brought back, I don't know, 5 billion other things that have nothing to do with my invoice. Why did that happen? And the reason for that is because it's kind of superfluous to what I'm trying to demonstrate here, but the changelog only has 3 keys that you can use to go by. And unfortunately, the vendor AP invoice table required at least 4 keys for it to be accurate. So what ends up happening is that you get all the records for the changelogs for that vendor, regardless of whatever invoice you come from. So if you're trying to look at 459147, even though I came from there, you're giving all the vendors changelog. And then now you have to figure out where the heck did my invoice go? And I don't know, I can't find it, right? So it's kind of annoying, and this can happen in a lot of situations. So one of the things that the user asked me is like, can you make this work so that when I click on the stupid changelog button, it gives me only the invoice I'm looking at? And after much looking at it, I was like, well, I could try to filter this grid in a customization, right? But this is a changelog viewer, which means it's the same for everything. So if I put a customization on changelog viewer, I would have to basically, every time there was a problem, I would have to go and make a change directly on the changelog viewer. And so I didn't want that to work. But then I started thinking about, well, how does Epicor get the data here? And I did a trace, and the trace showed me that Epicor uses a method called get changelog to get the information. And so I thought, well, maybe I can do some of that TTable cleanup to fix this problem. So let's go look at a BPM real quick that I put in place to fix this problem. And again, this is one of the situations where I wanted to change what the user is seeing, but I don't really want to delete changelog records, right? I don't want to do that. I want to have the ability to still maintain all my records, but I want the user to feel like they're only seeing what they want instead of getting a whole bunch of extra garbage. And again, I do maintain this is an Epicor bug. This particular one is a bug, but you know, we can't sit around waiting for bug fixes all day. So if I go look at my changelog, I have a BPM on get changelog, and here's one called fix AP invoice tracker, right? And so if I go in here, and I go somewhere, we're just gonna sit here and wait for Epicor to catch up to itself. And so basically all I'm doing while it loads is I'm cleaning up the result set on the TT invoice table, or the TT table rather, and removing anything that doesn't match what I expect. So I'm doing a TT changelog.remove, and I'm removing things from the TT changelog. And what that does is it filters down or removes things from the TT table. But again, because I talk about how the TT table is a temporary table that lives only in memory, even though I'm removing stuff, I'm simply removing it from the screen and not removing it from anywhere else. Okay, so it's a simple fix, and it kind of demonstrates the fact that those TT tables are completely malleable. So in a BPM, doesn't have to be in changelog, it can be anywhere. On any given BPM, you can simply modify the contents of that TT table to have it do whatever you want.
So just one note on that, because I got myself in trouble. If you do not use the to list 3 rows above it, you'll get an exception because the collection is not the memory. It'll it'll forgot.
Yep. Yeah. So what Hassel's talking about is this right here. So in general, when you run link, which is what this is a lambda expression, which translates to a link expression. In generally, when you run link is called lazy, is lazy initialized, meaning that the code in here doesn't actually get executed until the result is used. So if I didn't have this to list here, and I went to loop, like I'm doing here, loop through the log list, right? The where clause here would not be executed until I have gotten into the loop. So it would do, every time I loop, it would move the pointer inside the where clause one time. Well, in this case, I'm removing items from the list. And if I'm removing items from the list, then the count is changing actively, which means that then the where clause would return the lesser number of results, and you would have an explosion. Things would throw an exception.
And the error that throws up says the collection has been modified, and it like freaks out.
Yep. Yep, it would throw an error saying the collection has been modified. So when you're doing link, when you're doing link and you are going to iterate through those result sets, you probably always want to do toList. What toList does is it says, look, I know you're being lazy, but don't be. I want you to go ahead and execute the entire query and store the results of that in a separate list that now I can do whatever I want with. This is particularly important if you're running a database query. So this one was a temporary table query. It doesn't matter too much. It will blow up, but not a big deal. If you do not do toList when you're doing a database query, or if you do not do first or default, you will end up potentially with the record locks. So if this query here, for example, that I'm doing up here, I were to do for each var x in that query, like that, right? So this is doing a simple database query into the AP invoice detail table, right? And it's saying, find me all the AP invoice details that match the Cicero ID, and then select blah, blah, and blah, blah. But I did not do a to list here, right? If I did not do that, that means that this query is executed lazily, right? And a lock is placed on the AP invoice record as I loop. So if this has 10 results, so let's say this loops 10 times. Well, as I'm looping through, there's a lock placed on the AP invoice record as I'm looping, which means that you end up with things like deadlocks, record locking, and performance issues. So whenever you're doing a database query and you need to loop through the result set, always remember to send that to list, because sending it to list executes the entire query and removes the risk of having locks.
And Jose, have you also seen sometimes when you don't use to list, you see it hitting SQL 100 times, like individually versus just once and getting all the rows?
Yep, that's the other comment. So it basically, if you don't do to list, it turns this into what's called a cursor in SQL, and so it opens up a cursor in a transaction and it slowly loops through them one at a time. But while that cursor is open, the related records are all locked. So yeah, you will get performance issues that you do not want. So again, great tip there. Always, always, always. You know, they say never, but in this case, I'm going to say never not do a to list on a link query if you are expecting to receive multiple results. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so let's move on. I got 10 minutes. Okay. So let's kill that and let's move on to the next one. So that was a TTable cleanup. And again, it's a useful tool. Just be careful with it. Pub Sublevel Pro. This one's a pretty cool one. So a lot of us are used to the publish and subscribe mechanism, or Epi magic, so to speak, that exists in Epicor. And it's a really, really cool system. But sometimes when you go the custom route, you lose a little bit of that functionality. And so this is a couple of tips that hopefully will help you maintain that. Again, trying to keep your users' standards up to code. So this one here is particularly one that is a favorite of a lot of users, and that is the ability to do an open with and keep a subscription between the parent and the child. So if you look at the GIF down here at the bottom, I don't have this one in this system live, so we did a GIF for it a while back. But if you look at the bottom, there is a screen on the left that says slow moving bin locations, and that is the parent of bin tracker that is now shown on the right. And what we did is a custom bin tracker. So this is a completely custom, this guy is completely custom bin tracker that takes into account some of the business requirements. And so what we did is we added a custom open with. So you can right click on this bin and do open with, and it opens with this custom bin tracker. But when it does that, you normally would lose that functionality. So it would open with the custom bin tracker, but then as you navigate the original screen, you wouldn't keep the subscription on the bin tracker because that's not part of the original code in the custom screen. But you too can do that by simply using what's called a subscribe agent. So again, on the receiving end, so on the application that you wrote, the custom application that you want to keep subscribed, you can, when the form is launched, oops, sorry, let me look at the event here. When the form is launched, you can look to see if a value in was passed in. The value in is the value that was passed in from the open with mechanism. So when you do right click open with order entry, Epicor automatically populates this value in with the order number, for example, right? So if that value in is populated, that means that you were brought into the screen using an open with. You can then create a subscribe agent subscriber and attach it to that publisher key that is stored in the launch form options account from the system. And what that does is every time you change the parent record, it sends an event to the subscriber, any subscribers. There could be 1 million subscribers, it doesn't matter. You would be one of them. And it tells it, hey, there was a record change. Hey, there was a record change. And when that happens, this event here is triggered in your customization. And so then all you have to do is make sure that that event was meant for you, and then update the value of your form with the new value that was fed from the parent. And so you get that very very nice native behavior where you can navigate the parent and have the child kind of refresh by magic, even though they're two separate screens. Questions?
That's like the functionality. If you don't do a custom open with, if you use one of their built-in ones, that it just automatically updates.
It automatically does it for you. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Exactly. So this is for your custom screens. So if you want to do open with and have the custom screens behave the same way, this is how you would do that. But yeah, if you did this with like open with order entry, for example, order entry has this built in, so it will automatically keep that subscription alive for you. So you only have to do this if you're working on a completely custom screen, or you're doing something special that the standard behavior wouldn't apply to.
And same, you can apply this to screens that are broken that don't stay in sync properly. You can also turn around and define your own.
Yep, because remember, this is a subscription list, it's an event. So this guy, the subscriber, registered subscriber, can have as many subscribers as you want. So technically speaking, if you subscribe on top of whatever Epicor does, it doesn't matter. It will send the event to both subscribers, and you can both do something different if you want to, if you choose to. One thing you do need to remember, though, is be a good citizen and unsubscribe when your code is done. Otherwise, you're going to get memory leaks. So if you close this screen without running the unsubscribe code, which is this thing right here, removing that event, what will happen is then anytime you change the parent, it still thinks that it's got a subscriber waiting for it at your customization, and it's going to send that message to a non-existing or a null, right, screen. You're not going to get any errors, but every time it sends that message, it consumes a little bit of RAM, and eventually that RAM's going to spike, and you're going to crash your Epicor system. So it is important that you always unsubscribe your events when you exit the applications, particularly if your events exist outside of the current context. And in this case, the subscriber agent exists globally as part of the library over here, the lib broadcast. So anything that you do to subscriber agent can affect any screen that you want it to affect. So if you wanted to create a subscription for order entry in here, you could, because library broadcast is available globally. But again, if you don't remove that subscription at the end of the day, you might end up hurting yourself.
Do I don't know what the correct terminology is, but multi-level subscriptions work? So you have your starter screen, your parent screen, you do open with, and it opens, whatever. Yeah. Then on that one, you do open with, so you got a third one. Can you?
Yep, as long as, that should work. As long as you're keeping the subscriptions alive in your subscribe agent here. Like I said, you can have unlimited subscriptions. So if you open into this screen and you register a subscription, and then from this screen you do open with and you go into a third subscription and register that subscription from this, then you will have a cascading effect of 2 or 3 different subscriptions. Yes.
Gotcha. We're updating it at the base parent level updates, whatever else you have open.
Correct. Yeah, it would just kind of daisy chain it. Now, mind you, you do have to allow for processing time. So if you end up with a chain of, 15 screens open, when you navigate around, it's gonna, you're gonna click and it's gonna sit there for a minute thinking about all the different, the different queries that it's gotta run, and it's gonna run them all in sequence. So that can affect your performance. I've actually had that happen where I've had, an open with into order entry, open with into part, open with into job, open with, 6 layers deep, and then I switch a record and it just goes because it's trying to load, a new part screen, a new job screen, a new part bin record, and everything else to go with it. So be mindful of that.
How did that go? That was awesome.
All right. So, and I think this is my last. Oh no, it's not. I have one more. All right. So this one's a quickie. So if you have a subscription active, particularly if you're using BAQ data views, you can republish your initial value. So sometimes when you hit refresh on a BAQ data view, nothing happens, it doesn't refresh because it notices that you didn't change the publisher. If you run publish initial value and you give it that value again and you hit true for force, you can actually force a republish that will actually force that BAQ to refresh. And so that's a useful little trick because a lot of people complain about BAQ data views, which are a fantastic, fantastic tool. And they say, well, the problem is that, you know, if I make a change on the back end and I hit refresh, nothing happens unless I leave the record and come back into the record. Well, the reason for that is because it's smart and it says, well, you haven't left the record. There's no reason why you would have to requery that query again. It's trying to be efficient for you. But if you really wanted to, you can force it by publishing that value again. And I have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna go to the last one here. And so this one is a really, really favorite of mine, and that is server-side tracing. So Epicor has this write trace message that's available to anybody who wants to use it. And what that does is it allows you to write your own messages to the server trace. And so basically what it does is, in short, is that if you use this, you can have debug messages go to your log, but do it only when needed, so only on demand. So let me see if I can show that real quick before I run off out of time. So if I go into my method directive maintenance here.
And Jose, can we
yeah.
also, for the sake of the ones watching, can you also remind users that if they go after a period and actually hold control and press the space bar, they get autocomplete? Because many, believe it or not, don't know that. And I did not know that, because you can start typing ice dot control spacebar and kind of see what methods you can work with.
Yep. So there's autocomplete available. Depends on your version of Epicor, I must say. But there is autocomplete available in most versions of Epicor, I think after 10.2 in BPMs. So I just created this little function in my BPM. And all I did was I used the write trace message. And what Hasso is referring to is this. So if I do control space there, I get autocomplete. And it tells me what different methods are available, like you would in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So
now I'm curious how many of you in chat did not know about this, because I didn't know for 3.
Now, take that with a grain of salt. For some people using 10.1,
yeah, 10.1 you won't get
this. It pulls up every possibility, not just what's for the object that he hit it on. So if you are in 10.1, this is a dangerous thing to do. If you're in 10.2, it's pretty safe.
Yeah, and if you're in 10.1, upgrade. I'm just kidding. All right, so I just created this inline function here, or actually it's an inline method. And all I did is I said write trace message. I gave it my own trace. So this one's called custom my project. I can call it, you know, custom Jose. The beauty of this, and the reason why I do it, is because you can have one of these per BPM or per method or per project. It's unlimited what you can do here, and you can turn them on and off at will. So you can leave them in your code and only have them print out when you're debugging. So I just created this little function. It's called WT, and it is you know, trace ice custom Jose my awesome BPM. So I can write my BPM code, whatever it is I want, and when I want to have some debug messages pop out, I'm just going to say WT, and I want to say, there we go, right? So I'm gonna put in my message in my BPM. Now this BPM is let me copy this. This BPM is inside ABC code get new, right? So I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna enable my BPM. And so now, if I go into my server, which I just got kicked out of, there we go. If I go into my server and I go into my app server config, this is where you can actually add all the built-in Epicor trace files, right? These are all the, you can look at the BO readers and the stuff like that, but you have the freedom to create your own. So you can see down here, I have a custom one called Ice Custom My Project that I can enable or disable. The one I just created is Ice Custom Jose. So I'm just gonna go ahead and type in here, Ice Custom Jose, and I'm going to remove the comments to enable it and hit save. So now, just by hitting save there, if I go to ABC code, maintenance, which is my favorite screen to play in, and I hit new, nothing seemingly happens, but I have now enabled my trace log, and I can search and I can see that my BPM fired and my message triggered. But if I don't want to see that anymore, I'm done debugging it. There's no reason to clutter my log with extra crap. So all I do is I simply comment that back out or remove it, right? And then if I go back to ABC code and I hit clear and I hit new, I can go back to my server log. And even though the code's still in place, I don't see a new hello handsome. I just see the one that I had done originally. And so that allows you to put in debug messages in your BPM code, keep them in place so that if 6 months from now somebody goes, oh man, this BPM you wrote is awesome, but it quit working on me. All you have to do is go into your app server configs, enable your debug flags, run through and say, oh, I see why that's not working, or oh, I see why this isn't triggering. So it's a good way to document your code, keep it documented, and enable and disable that flag as needed. And with that, I am 3 minutes over my time limit, so I have about 7 minutes for questions if you have any.
Not a problem, Jose. Also on that function that you turn around and put in your BPM code in 10.2.600, you could write that as a function.
Yeah,
and then you
Epicor
just call the function. You don't have to add that code to every BPM. You just add the function and you're done.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a good point. Thank you, Calvin. That's a great idea too. So yeah, you can just write this one little snippet here as a proper Epicor function that maybe takes in a message and maybe a name or an ID. And so then all you would have to do is drag that, in 600, there's a little, one of these little guys that says invoke function. And you just drag it in there and then pass in the message you want and the flag, and ta-da, you have working debugging in your BPM code. All right, anything else? Any questions, comments, concerns? I got through all my stuff. I put the sample code in Epi users, and like I said, I will send it out to Calvin and Fred to repost on the EUG and YouTube and anywhere else that you guys go fetch code.
LinkedIn.
No hassle. You can repost to LinkedIn. Okay. That's your shtick. All right. All right. Well, that's my time. Thank you for
Good job.
for your attention.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jose.
Awesome.
Okay. And any questions, or does anyone need a bio break or run out? Go ahead and hit it now. We got a few minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the magic mic over to Frank Jones and Dave McPhail from Memex, and we're going to take a look at data-driven manufacturing with the Merlin Tempest and what they've been developing over there.
Good afternoon.
Any questions or anything to throw over to Jose here? We got a few minutes.
No, I guess Jose, just keep an eye out on the chat. And
yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now.
Yep.
Thank you.